So good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Skillman, and I'm Director of the MA in Cultural Sustainability here at Goucher College. I want to welcome you to the second of 5 webinars in our Spring Chat Fest series. I think this is the most we've done. Tonight, we'll be focusing on the question why cultural sustainability matters. But the series this semester has really been exploring climate adaptation and its impact on the cultures of the future. So before we begin, I have some quick reminders. Closed captioning is available if you click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this. So if you prefer not to be on screen, simply turn off your video. In fact, it might be a good idea to keep your video off until we open it up for conversation anyway. Keep your microphone on mute, please. And if you like, you can put your setting on speaker view, and that way, that's what you'll see. If a question does come to you while I'm talking or while our speakers are talking, please just type them in the chat, and either Taylor, Seitzinger, or I will make sure that that question gets asked. We have been calling this series Chat Fest because they're really designed as conversations with some kind of opening remarks by our speaker, and then a moderated dialogue or a chat. So please feel encouraged to communicate with each other using the chat. And if you like, you can start by just putting your name, introducing yourself in the chat, and saying why you're here. That would be really great. So, as I said, this spring series of online conversations explores the future of culture, especially in this age of climate adaptation and what I would call exploding digital technology. So here you can see a preview of the upcoming virtual conversations. I've also put a little QR code down in the corner that will take you to a page where you can actually register for these sessions, as well as any of the other sessions that are being offered by the various graduate programs here at Goucher College. And you can go ahead and sign up now and just get it on your calendar so that you don't have to think about it later. I want to introduce Taylor Seitzinger, who I mentioned a minute ago. She is our graduate student admissions counselor, and I will be sharing her email address along with mine at the end, just so you have them to reach out and talk to us. But in the meantime, Taylor's going to be putting various links in the chat that will help you connect to some of our resources. And if you missed any of our previous online conversations, and last week, we had a really great conversation about what culture might look like 1,000 years from now. So you can access that as well as any of our other recordings on our YouTube channel, ironically called Cultural Sustainability at Goucher College. And here again is another QR code that will take you to that webpage. That YouTube channel if you are interested. Taylor might also put the link in the chat for you so that you'll have it. But we'll also put this recording there so that you'll have a chance to revisit this if you like. So our agenda for tonight is really that I will offer an overview of the Max program, and then we'll hear from 2 current students and an alumni that I've kind of prompted with some questions to think about. And then we'll open it up for questions from you all. So get your questions ready and yeah, take notes so that we can have a good conversation in the end. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about our program. So much of the information I'm going to talk about can be found on our website, which Taylor will also put in the chat for you so that you'll have it for future reference. First, just a little bit of an overview of who we are. Max was founded in 2010, and in fact, we're celebrating our 15th anniversary this year on May 24th here at Goucher College. I'm really excited about that. Our program has really been a leader in establishing and in defining the field of cultural sustainability. Since our program started, we've seen this concept of cultural sustainability sort of blossoming even at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. They established a cultural sustainability program. So our faculty are practitioners as well as renowned scholars in the field. They're out there doing the work. They're out there being thought leaders and really thinking about cultural sustainability. And perhaps some of our guests will talk a little bit about the faculty when we get there. The other thing I want to say is that we have been teaching in this hybrid low residency format for a lot longer than most people, for 15 years. So our faculty really have a good sense of how to engage people in online conversations. And our alumni are really thought leaders. They are writers, educators, advocates, cultural leaders, and I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. Our speakers in a few minutes will kind of tackle this question of what is cultural sustainability. But here's sort of a general overview that I like to share, that it is an interdisciplinary field drawing on anthropology, folklore, applied anthropology rather, public history, public humanities, management, and various disciplines that is really focused on helping our students to identify, protect, and enhance the traditions that are really important either to them in their own communities or in communities that matter to them, to kind of do this cultural activism work. Our courses engage students in a variety of strategies: activism, field work, academic scholarship, internships, various forms of communication, really to try to embed our students in what's happening on the ground in the field of cultural sustainability. And really it's about ensuring the viability of these cultures and communities into the future, with a goal of really achieving cultural equity so that all communities and cultures can thrive and do no harm to others. So a little bit about the numbers. You can complete the program in as little as 2 years, though many of our students take about 2.5 years. A few take 3. But I think the point is that I really want to emphasize that we are very flexible. You have a lot of flexibility as a potential student in the program so that you can really go at your own pace based on what's happening in your own life, what's going on in your own life. We have students who work full-time, students who are full-time parents, and sometimes they just can only take one class at a time, and that's fine. So you have 5 years to finish the program. The degree requires 36 credits. This is brand new. We just had this approved last week, that we are reducing the number of credits from 42 to 36 so that the program is a little bit more affordable, and that you can take a little less time to get through the program. Of those credits, 21 of them are required, leaving 15 credits that are electives and management courses that you can mix and match in order to customize the education in the way that you want it. You will take some management credits because we believe this is a way to build professional skills and to just make you a little bit more marketable when you leave the program. And the last time that we polled our alums, and I think it's probably been 4 years now, so I need to do it again, 87% of them reported working in careers that were directly related to their degrees. And those that were in other careers talked about the relevance and the applicability of their degree in their career choice, even if it was outside of a cultural sustainability kind of career. So there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of applicability in this program. Um, we like to think of this as a curriculum for emerging cultural leaders who are really looking to work collaboratively with communities in a world where equity is threatened. And I think that's happening more and more. And so our students are very interested in documenting the experiences and the history and the stories, the narratives, the lives, the traditions of, especially of cultures that are threatened with erasure. So our students often explore really different models of leadership that foreground community well-being and empowerment that really that puts the community in the decision-making role of shaping their own futures. So if you go, you can go to our curriculum webpage to see all of the courses that we offer. And in fact, on that webpage, you'll see a short description of each course. And for most of the courses, you'll also see an updated syllabus. I've tried to, in fact, just recently updated all the syllabi for courses that have been taught in the last couple of years. So you can get a really good sense there of what these courses look like. But I think overall, the courses are really about giving our students ways to apply a cultural lens in any kind of work, whether that is in organizations, it's in the arts and healthcare, community organizing, museums, education. I mean, just sort of all over the spectrum. And as I said before, you choose the electives, and I've identified some of the more popular electives here on this track, but you get to choose the ones that you want to pursue. And then all of our management courses are really framed around ethical and humanitarian leadership, all of which I think paves the way for our students to work in the public humanities, or guides our students to actually be pretty creative about the kind of work that they will do. Now, a lot of people like to know a little bit about the actual timeline of the program. So I created this chart to just give you a sense. As I said, most students take about 2.5 years, but I think with the 36 credits, it'll be pretty easy to finish the program in 2 years. And we begin generally with the summer residency, where students get the Introduction to Cultural Sustainability course and maybe one other course. And that is a residency where students come to campus and have a lot of face-to-face interaction with each other, with other students in other grad programs, and with our faculty. And then you move to an online, in the fall, to an online format where you might take 1 or 2 courses, just really depending on your your capacity. Some students will do 1 course their first online semester just to see how it fits into their work-life balance, and some will take 2. So, and some will take 3. Some very ambitious students will take 3, one of whom is with us today. So we might hear a little bit from him. But anyway, then in the winter, we have an intensive opportunity, either like a residency intensive, which I'll talk about in a minute, or an online intensive where you can take 1 course over the course of 4 weeks and knock that out. And then the cycle begins again with a summer you can either do online or you can do residency the second summer, and then fall. And then I usually, I mean, in this scenario, a student could start their capstone proposal in the spring, coming up, designing the proposal and then doing some of the background research in January, and then starting in the fall, doing background research in January, and then finishing up in the spring. Some have extended it a little bit, maybe taken a whole semester to do background research on their capstone. But anyway, that's kind of the format. It's a combination, low residency is a combination of coming together on campus or in some other location that I'll talk about in a minute, and then doing online work. But the beauty of the residency, of being on campus together, is that you create a really strong sense of community that carries you through the online part of the coursework, so that you actually have really close relationships with your cohort, and you can call on them at any moment to brainstorm your ideas and talk about your courses. So let's see, did I go too fast? Yeah. So this slide just gives you a little bit of a sense of how our students are applying those courses. And this gives you some of the topics for their capstones. And that QR code will take you to a page where you can read about some of these capstones. But I'll say a little bit about our students. They come in, some of them know exactly what they want to do when they come into the program, and others have no clue at all. And some have a vague sense that, but I think they all have a vague sense that culture is an important part of being human. And they're looking for maybe the credibility and the guidance to build a career that allows them to do that kind of cultural work. So our students range in age from fresh out of undergrad to people who are looking for second careers, or just looking for personal and enhancement, enlightenment. We have students in the program from 25 to 65. And what I love about that intermingling of those generations is that we get the fresh ideas and idealism of the younger students, and the experiences of the more seasoned students. And in our conversations in class, I think that really enriches those conversations. So I really love that about this program. So then once they've explored those various topics, they go on to find work in a variety of careers. This chart gives you, an idea of where some of our graduates are working. But you'll notice that 90% of them have found full-time or part-time employment, while 10% of them are perhaps pursuing other options, like we have quite a number of students who are going on for a PhD, and some who are starting their own business. So, but I think this gives you a list of the range of places where people are able to overlay what they've learned in this program into multiple career sectors. And so I think that's very exciting. So I mentioned that we have these in these residency experiences. And I'm going to talk a little bit about experiential opportunities. I think this is a increasingly important part of this program. We just did this really wonderful 2-week field school, interdisciplinary field school in Nepal, with students from the Historic Preservation Program and students from the Environmental Sustainability and Management Program. We had 10 students, 9 students, and 1 alumni who went with us to Nepal for 2 weeks. We traveled around the country, from Kathmandu to the Chitwan Wildlife Preserve, and then over to Pokhara, and up into one of the communities near the Annapurna trekking base camp. We did a little trekking. And these experiences were really pretty amazing. Because it was interdisciplinary, we had really a lot of aha moments and very thoughtful conversations among the students and the faculty that went. And it was actually subsidized by a donation to Goucher that enabled the students to go for the cost of their airfare and tuition, and they didn't have to pay any of the programmatic costs. So that was a pretty amazing experience. In 2023, we took a group of students to Washington, D.C., and we spent 5 days there, hosted by the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage at the Smithsonian, where we visited museums, we met with curators, we explored the relationship between public representations of culture and cultural sustainability. And the students wrote an essay for the Smithsonian Folklife magazine. And two of the students in that actually ended up with internships at the Smithsonian afterwards, which takes me to internships. So we are very much interested in promoting internships as part of our curriculum. Students can take 1.5, 3 credits, or 4.5 credits of an internship. They can do it in one semester or spread it out over 2 consecutive semesters. You can do an internship that is content focused, that would be an elective, or you can do an internship that is sort of management administrative focused, that would fit a management skill. But we have connections with the Smithsonian, the National Council for Traditional Arts, the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, Sandy Spring Museum, the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. And we also encourage students to find organizations within their own communities. And then we would help you work with your field advisor to design and build out that internship experience. So that's another aspect of our experiential opportunities. And then finally, the thing everybody wants to know about, fees. So with the reduction to 36 credits, the tuition falls around $37,000, but I would say that it's more like 39,000, including residency fees and technology fees. Your travel and lodging are on your own, but we, especially when you come to campus, we can give you housing on campus, which greatly reduces that cost and makes it really fun. You can take meals on campus, which makes it really simple and easy. Most of our students have some form of financial aid, and we really have a great staff to help you work that through if that's what you're interested in. And you can get a payment plan, although you have to, each semester needs to be totally paid off before you can register for the next semester. But you can stretch that plan out over the full semester. And then scholarships. We do have scholarships that are between 10 and 20% of the cost of tuition. They're fairly simple to receive. You just send me a separate essay, short essay. Pick one of the scholarships that is identified on our website and write an essay that relates to that and your particular educational interests. And then, we take a look at that. We see what our numbers look like, and then we can give you that scholarship. That's usually spread out over 4 semesters. So it would be a credit on each of those semesters. So I think that takes me to this last slide, which is Taylor's email address and my email address. So if you have questions specific to the admissions process, reach out to Taylor. If you have questions about the program itself, then you can reach out to me. But both of us are happy to meet with you and talk with you individually if you're interested. So I will stop sharing. And let's see, I would like to introduce 3 people because I think it's valuable for you all to hear from people who have been involved in the program. So if you all want to put your videos on now, we can have a conversation. I'm going to introduce first Stacie Cutbank. Stacie is a member of the Oneida Nation in Wisconsin. She's currently working on her capstone with a focus on Indigenous knowledge that is embodied in the narratives of place and that have specific importance to an important waterway within her community, and she's writing about that in her capstone. Cory France is also here. He has pursued a dual degree with cultural sustainability and historic preservation. And he's also working on his capstone right now, which is drawing on Black geographies and activist anthropology to explore Black cemetery citizenship and the question, who tends the forgotten, especially in a landscape that has historically been built to erase Black history. And then finally, our third guest tonight is Max Lannon. Max graduated from the Max program in 2014. His capstone thesis offered an analysis of the transition of craft to technological work and the role of organizational structure in facilitating or inhibiting that transition. And he did all of this through the lens of his own trade apprenticeship in his family's post-industrial glass manufacturing business. So I think they're here. Wonderful. Welcome, you guys. I'm so excited to see you all. Thank you for being here. So I wanted to start with just maybe what drew you to the program, to the Max program in particular. Why did cultural sustainability seem like the right choice for you for graduate school? Who wants to go first?
I can jump in.
All right. Go, Max.
I think the easiest answer is at the time I was indecisive. If I'm being super honest, I had really broad and varied interests. I had studied East Asian language and anthropology in undergrad, and I was not really satisfied with finding programs that let me sort of find my way between those interests or pursue them both. And so when I heard about the Max program, it seemed like uh, an interesting opportunity to sort of, look at a lot more of those varied interests that I was looking for.
Yeah, that's great. And Max, did you find out about the program from a friend? Do I remember that?
I actually found out about it first at my
Oh,
at in my undergraduate studies.
okay.
One of the prominent members of my anthropology department had mentioned it. Um, so it
Nice.
had become the topic of discussion. And then I actually ran into an alum by
Mm-hmm.
pure chance who had also studied East Asian language. And so it seemed like a good fit.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Well, and I hear from a lot of potential students that this program seems to kind of fall between, like it's what they're looking for when they really don't want to do anthropology or they don't want to do sociology or something else. So yeah, Cory, how about you?
I'm really resonating with having varied interests and being super ambitious and wanting to do all things. That's still the same. I think that definitely tracks today. But I came into this program already having a master's degree, having all this extensive experience in strategic communications. So I was doing various aspects of communications work, whether it was production based or really doing communication strategy, high level comm strategy for organizations. So, I was also doing a lot of independent work online. I found it easier to work with people through that medium. I was able to travel. And so I wanted to maximize on sort of having this autonomy and being able to study, all of the, across these interests. And also build community with folks who were also just as quirky as I was, or just as confused and maybe had winding paths, or maybe had always had sort of an interdisciplinary background. And I think I certainly had those skill sets. there was also this initially, I'm a dual degree student. So I had some historic preservation experience, but on the marketing side, on the storytelling side. So I was really sort of promoting historical information and historic sites, historic house museums in Columbia, South Carolina. And I remembered being in a program so many years ago, of it being in that environment, fresh out of American University, a comms program, and thinking, well, this is actually what I want to do. It's something about connecting with people and something about being in place and addressing sort of these layered issues that were connected to these places and all the meanings that were associated with sites. And there were so many that were missing. And I was curious about them, like, where's my family? Where are our homesteads? And I realized it's like, I don't really know much about the built environment or about historic preservation at all. And I knew one day I would find myself, back there, maybe studying that. I got really sick one before during this application process. And I was in the hospital and kept thinking to myself, I had pneumonia, and I was thinking, if this is like the last thing, is this not going to be my life? Like, am I not going to start living and doing the things that I enjoy and engaging with the communities that I engage, that I love? Am I going to just stop? Like, is this going to be my life? And so I knew then that I was going to pursue a career in historic preservation. I happened to Google and do a lot of extensive research and stumbled upon Goucher's historic preservation program. But as I was going through this website, cultural sustainability popped up, and I can't even remember how it popped up on, but I got a little curious and I thought, I think it was the word culture, and maybe it was sustainability that had resonated with me. But I thought, this feels like me as well. This is all about communities and thinking about, communities that are threatened because of all of these different sort of advents that were occurring, technology and building practices and the whole nine. And so I knew that I would, in order for me to be the kind of preservationist that I saw myself being, that I would definitely need that layer. And I think cultural sustainability speaks to that. Again, that in betweenness, that sort of, you're always in between worlds, you're always in the, it's sort of that sort of transitional stage. And I felt like this was a community that was happy about being in the in-betweens and happy about not knowing. And I left that page thinking, having more questions and not any sort of absolutes. And I thought, that's really interesting. Maybe this will sort of encourage that type of practice. And so, yeah, I took that journey and it went from there.
Great, thanks. Stacie, what drew you to the program?
To the program, I would say, I guess I'm not a young chick, but had a lot of years as a planner, stepped into a tribal historic preservation officer position, cultural outreach advocate as well. Have a lot of interest in our culture and the environment and community, and that's where my heart is. And just always knew I wanted to go on to school. I had my undergrad in urban and regional studies, which is also interdisciplinary. So I really like that idea of, stepping into different, I guess, fields of knowledge and the application of it. I would say that at the time, looking for a way to make change in my community, just in my tribal community. I would say that, there's healing that needs to be had and work that I cannot do by myself. And I think for the most part, it's about a systems of change and really not knowing how to go about it. And just looking at the program itself, it offered management for one thing, and that appealed to me because just within the organization, it just seems, or even to work outside of the tribe and connect with federal, state, and local agencies, to be at the table. There just seemed to be for myself, that need to have something more than where I was at. And I thought I guess what I saw was also the management side of the program, and possibly giving me that opportunity to, I guess, step into those spaces and be at the table and make the changes that I would like to see made for our people. So yeah, and then similar to Max, it's like seeing somebody that's familiar, whether it was through your own studies. For me, it was a fellow um Native American woman who was in another tribe who was working with their culture center. And within the state of Wisconsin, they highlight like the top, I don't know if it's like 40 Native Americans within the state, and she was one of them. So they gave a bio, and in her bio it said she was a graduate of Goucher in the Cultural Sustainability program. And sometimes, you connect with those things and then you wonder, can I do that? And so that's what that was for me, a nudge in the right way, and just to participate in this type of platform and connect with Cory, another individual in our cohort, Raina, who we will all be walking together with. It was just, I guess, there's a certain energy there that has been held throughout this whole 2.5 years. So very grateful.
So, my second question was to reflect a little bit on the strengths of the program. Stacie, you just mentioned one, which is that cohort, right? That kind of,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That cohort aspect is probably and I think that is across the board. It's something that I've felt with the grad programs, or at least I sensed it. I had the benefit of being a part of two communities that were different in approaches, and perhaps the individuals were all different and they came from different backgrounds, but the spaces that we held together and that the moments that we created together was the most enchanting part about the experience. I think, I kept asking myself, did I really come here? I mean, is this rigorous enough? Is this what I really came here for? Is the credibility going to follow me coming through this? And I do believe it does. But that becomes sort of secondary to the sort of love that and the connections that you make with the folks that you study with. I've learned so much from my peers. I mean, I call them all the time. Stacie will tell you multiple times. I mean, literally. And we'll probably all still continue to link up and do fun things together. But one other thing is, the beauty about the Max program is that you have full permission to bring your whole self, all the complexities along with it. We move through our own journeys together, and I think there's just so much space and so much room for you as an individual to express, all of the things that come to mind for you and that inspire you. And I think that safety is so critical, especially in current times where, these types of spaces are largely under attack or being actively erased. So I think there's something about the act of holding that space together and holding difference together I think that alone is a very, very powerful attribute of the program and really all of the grad programs.
That's beautiful. Max, do you have a story or a strength you want to share? A story about something that you felt was the strength of the program?
I don't know that I have much to add beyond what Cory and Stacie mentioned. The only thing that I would maybe contribute is I found myself having to kind of work to keep up with a lot of the people I met through the program, which was really exciting. People from totally different backgrounds. It was interesting to see how we would hold each other accountable and kind of push each other. it was really exciting.
Yeah, great. So, you know, reflecting reflecting on your time, and you know, two of you are working on your capstones right now. Um, how what do I want to say? What does cultural sustainability mean to you? I mean, maybe you've already addressed it, but I want to give you the opportunity to define it or describe it for yourself if you have a definition or a understanding that you'd like to share. And maybe it's about you know, how do you see yourself employing it? Max, I'm really curious, for instance, you know, how, you know, are there principles or strategies or perspectives that you see yourself continuing to pay attention to that came out of being in the Max program?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think when I was still in the program, I was looking at something a lot more. I don't know if cultural democracy is still one of the readings, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, that was kind of an exciting take on what it should be. But I've found in life it's much more like Culture and Calamity. Um,
Did you take that class too?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
That was some time ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think to me, first of all, it's funny that 15 years deep, we're still talking about what it is. And for me, it's just coming out of the program with a set of principles and a set of peers that, again, we sort of held each other accountable to some standard of our own invention, and thinking about that day to day and making, you know, sometimes tough decisions, uh, I think has been really helpful. Um, because that's, you know, that idea of setting a standard for each other, um, and having to choose, okay, what is it that's important in these projects? That was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the program. That is the theory, I guess, the working theory.
Yeah, that's great. I know for me, I do other work outside of Goucher. Some of you know I do a little bit of research work and contract work, and you know, I'm constantly thinking about the ethical implications of any decision making. The other thing that I feel is in any kind of a leadership role, um, paying attention to kind of the multiple voices, right? Like right now, I'm the president of the American Folklore Society, and so when I work with that board, I think a lot about you know, how to try to really make sure that all those voices are part of the conversation, and that we are all, that we are all listening out into the membership. And I think that is you know, rooted in my experience with Max too. So, Cory, you're unmuted. Were you going to add something?
I mean, I could really answer this in a number of ways, but I think keeping it to my work now, fortunately, because of these amazing programs, I've managed to transition into the field of historic preservation and on the cultural resource management side, which was a whole completely frightening world that I had not ever endeavored down at all. I'm a program person. I'm, you know, always in the mix. I like to really engage with folks, moving from deep facilitation work to now thrust into a space where you're doing a meaningful work and you're sort of evaluating and reading and observing everything around you, but doing it with so many constraints. And, you know, I guess the beauty, cultural sustainability is just that reminder for me that there's humanity in everything, that, you know, to center, a reminder to center humanity, and to center ethics and think about, you know, finding the life and the possibility in the things around you. And I think we were talking about in-betweens, but I love that idea because this is sort of a field that is constantly evolving and defining itself. And I think that's the current that I really appreciate the most about the field, is that there really are no absolutes, just more opportunities to connect, to gain understanding, to go deeper. And I think it's a feeling more than I think a statement or a set of words. I think we can totally do that. One of the things that I loved, we were taking a course, and I believe this was with Rory, Stacie, correct me, who's the founders of the program. But we actually tried to define cultural sustainability, and we sort of just wrote these definitions, and everyone had different definitions. Some people even had symbols and pictures. It's just that alone, I think, expresses what this is. So, I mean, I would love to have a finite answer, but I think the cultural sustainability way of responding to that is that there's no right or wrong, and that all things can be what this is. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the field. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I actually do have Rory Turner's and Michael Mason's definition. And, it occurred, I mean, I thought it kind of would have been fun tonight. Let me see if I can lay my hands on it easily. Because I was thinking it would be kind of fun to dig into it and
Deconstruct.
deconstruct it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see if I can find it. It would be
And I remember that course when we had to make a list of all these different words.
Yeah.
And so, not saying that my background, I'm mostly tactile, not academia. That's where my headspace is. So to step into this program and to learn, I guess, the big words.
I know. There are tons of
the
them.
big
And my
words.
takeaway from that introduction is liminal. Is it
Mhm.
liminal?
Uh-huh.
And
Liminal.
so, and then to think about, okay, what does cultural sustainability mean to me? It's the practice, it's the application,
Mhm.
and it's the learning of, okay, how do I identify myself in a movement? And so I think about my capstone and the wanting for change and the healing of my community and restoring of kinship between our people and the natural environment. And then learning about that it happens when, and what I think it was in a reading, it's defined as the edge.
Mhm.
Do you remember
Uh-huh.
that?
Yeah.
That's what resonated with me, is it's that space that where change can happen, and to really, dig in,
Mhm.
I think, and to really allow that to happen and move past those fears. And I think that's what this program helped me to do. I think it took all this time for me to get there,
Hmm.
to actually believe in myself and to have a voice. I may not be the one that's talking the most, but and that's okay.
No, you're the
Um,
deep river. You're my deep river.
River. Yeah.
and I had to be okay with that. But deep down there was this internal strife, like, okay, I needed to be, or I needed to do, and I needed to find myself in my own voice, which is a Native American woman in this space. And it's okay to have my own thoughts and my own perspective. So
Mhm.
Oh yeah, positionality comes up a lot. In
Yeah,
this.
well, so I think the notion of liminal, I think of liminal as that moment in between, and you all have talked about this program kind of being in that in between space, and that's the space where anything's possible, right? So I love that. I did post Rory Turner and Michael Mason's definition of cultural sustainability in the chat. But Melanie Lytle has also asked if we would talk about the future of cultural sustainability work in light of the political upheaval that we're seeing and the current administration's attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, that could be so dangerous to vulnerable communities. You know, this is the to me, the moment, right? Like, and I've had this conversation in my own head. Do I duck in like a turtle and not use those words, or do I stick my neck out and use those words and say, if this is what's important to you, come be with us? And I've chosen, if this is what's important to you, come be with us, because I feel like it's really important that, I mean, right now, but I'd love to know what your all thoughts are in response to Melanie's question.
I love this question. It's the same. It's the question that runs and plays in my mind every day, to be honest with you. I was speaking earlier and talking about, you know, we were discussing the liminal and in-betweens and also possibilities. You know, Rory Turner also mentioned like a series of beginnings. There's always a project within a project, this sort of cyclical action happening. But one other thing that I would say, it's also about refusal too. It's refusal to be erased. And Stacie talks about, you know, who is she as, you know, a Native woman, and finding that voice. And I think there's safety and there's a sort of freedom to be that thing and to stand fully in it. And so I do think the time is now for this sort of tool that we've now learned, that we are still learning and will always be defining and learning. But this is really activating the most human part of yourself. I mean, all it's asking is for listening, for understanding, for reaching across and building bridges, for going deeper, for challenging. You know, these are all still the tools and sort of the benefits of sort of the field, is that there's room to explore all of those, to wake up those sort of senses, to pivot, to know when something is not right, and to have the courage to, you know, stand up for what you believe in. And so I think the future is, I think I was telling Stacie this, I was a little bit afraid, and it may have been Stacie and some other folks that I shared. I am a little bit afraid, and I am a little, you know, we get all of these updates and we see what's happening, but I'm also pretty excited for what this could mean. Because I know that, you know, where there's all of this resistance and there's this current of erasure, there's folks on the other side of that are leaning into community and love and connection and want to safeguard. A friend of mine who's never considered herself to be an archaeologist just started an archive using social media to build community, just to chronicle what we're dealing with in this present moment. And
That's
so
great.
we get those tools. We
Yeah.
get the tools to learn how to, you know, to the oral history sort of approaches. I mean, it's starting with just pressing record and having a conversation with your elders, or maybe, you know, going back to that site that you once felt a little distant, you know, some distance with, and interrogating why you feel that way. So I think their times are very fertile, even though they're a little bit confusing. But the tools, cultural sustainability reminds us that the tools are inside of us already, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think at this, you know, I think the big question that we're all asking is, what can we do, right? I mean, the other thing I keep asking is, who can stop him, but I'm trying to figure that out. But you know, so we have to start with ourselves, right? And so how do we interact with people, and how do we reach out? How do we support? And how do we build those bridges? And I think you're absolutely right that, and this is something that you talked about in the culture and calamity course, right? And we talk about in the intro class, and we talk about in other classes, is when your way of living is threatened, that's when you band together, right? That's when you come together and support each other. We see it all the time, and I think we're seeing it here too. But
I'll add
so
to this too, and what we noticed with the National Park Service, there have been a lot of, you know, terminations, and a lot of people lost their livelihoods. And in the historic preservation field, and I'm very new, and I've just felt the weight of 30 or 40-year careers or better, and just folks that I know work really, really hard to fight for the places that we occupy and interact with every day, to see it and to see the movement pivot to alternative movements there, where the infrastructure sort of, where it happened and it was built in the moment, in response to what's taking place. And so you do have reminders in the actions that even communities like that are making to protect the work that they're doing. And I think that's the pivot, and that's the exciting part, is there's opportunities for imagination and to construct whole other worlds that counter this sort of
Yeah.
ideology
Yeah.
way of being.
Yeah. Stacie or Max, do you have thoughts you want to add to Melanie's question?
I think for me, when you pose that question and you talk about upheaval, I don't think that's something new for me in my community. I think that's in existence of day to day. But I do think very much to what you're saying, Amy, about making those connections. I think it's an opportunity to really view each other and differences in a different way. That's, to me, an upheaval of change. And to think about those connections, that work already exists. And I think I'll just say in my community, it already exists. The the simplicity of trying to get back to, but can't get there. We can't go backwards, but it's how do we integrate, I think, that traditional knowledge and those principles in our teachings into what we have today in our organization, in our policies and our laws that we have for our people. Um, I mean, right now we're just going and stepping onto a big topic of discussion, which is identity, because the trend for our membership is declining. And that's the whole agenda from the US government. So this is something that's not new in terms of upheaval.
Yeah. Right.
So this is always a daily thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but it
thank
gets
you.
tiring,
Yes, I can imagine.
The
I
work
can
is
imagine.
tiresome.
It's exhausting. I mean, I'm exhausted, and I don't have this as a generational experience, right? Like you have, like Cory has. I haven't had that. And I'm exhausted. I can't even imagine how exhausting it is for a community that is constantly fighting erasure, right? And constantly fighting those challenges. And but I think the I know it's a word that's overused, resilience, but we do fight back, right? We do. We have to fight back. We have to bounce back. We have to, yeah. So I'm mindful of our time. It's 7 o'clock. This kind of went by pretty fast. Do you all want to add one last thought or comment? Or actually, first, let's ask if Queen, did you have any questions that you, as you're listening to us, that you would like to ask this group?
I don't have any questions. Sorry, can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Is that good? I don't have any questions. I'm definitely thinking as someone who is a early career professional, as a cultural resource specialist and environmental anthropologist. I'm just seeing what it looks like for us who've been recent college graduates, that things
Mhm.
are really shaking up. So what are we going to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm in spaces with people who have graduate degrees, and I'm over here with my little bachelor's, and I'm saying, I'm gonna have to hold on to this because the market, okay, the job market, the economy, I,
Yeah.
I, for many of us, it's expensive
It
to go
is. Yeah.
back to school. When things are, they're shifting every day, and you're
Mhm.
just trying to keep up. And that's something I've seen with people who are either still in college, whether they're traditional or non-traditional college students, is what am I going to do when I
Yeah.
graduate
Mm-hmm.
and what's out there for me? So there's
Yeah.
a lot that I'm thinking of, just hearing
Yeah.
everybody else's experiences, um, just considering, will there be anything left?
Well, right. What you mean? Will there be any jobs left?
Yeah, jobs or opportunities,
Yeah.
because
Well,
I've,
actually,
you
I
know,
think, yeah. And I think that what's going on right now, as, um, I think Cory and Stacie alluded to, is, um, there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done, right? It's just, it's trying to figure out how to position yourself so that you have the credibility and the skills and the perspective to be able to do it. I mean, I hear a lot that the MA is the new BA, right? That people need the MA to actually be competitive. But you balance that with also the fact that there's a growing kind of conservative um, uh, negation of the value of education, which is part of the problem, I think. So, yeah, Max.
Yeah, I might have a little bit to say about that, just because my work is kind of different than what a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of Max alums end up doing. And I mean, make no mistake, I found my way to it through a very long family tradition. But you know, Amy, maybe close your ears for a second, because while this isn't necessarily an endorsement of the Max program, it is an endorsement of, I definitely look for talented people wherever they come from.
Mhm.
And my best engineers are from art and psychology backgrounds.
Yeah.
And the engineers that I came up with in the factory were usually out of their depth, coming from engineering programs, just because they could not sort of deal with how much of our work was intangible stuff.
Mm.
Um, Avenues of information that weren't clear to them. Um, a variety of things that required more creative problem solving, or sometimes just plain being able to communicate and educate. Um, I think different people find their own ways to those skill sets. And, I don't even necessarily think an MA is required for that. But certainly it's one place where you can learn it. And I definitely did personally find value, again, from both the faculty and the peers that I met through Max. But
Mhm.
you know, I appreciate, I'm thankful for that. But at the same time, I work with people who did find it in other ways, from other avenues. Um, I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, it reminds me, we had a market study done on the cultural sustainability program last fall, um, and the folks that did the study acknowledged that this is a very small kind of niche field, but that the skills that people are learning in this program are skills that are valued in multiple careers, across the spectrum, not just in the arts or in museums, but across the spectrum. That as they reached out to and looked at the job descriptions from multiple corporations, that inevitably these kinds of skills were on that list. So thank you for uh, reminding me of that. Yeah, cool. Well, okay. So, um, any last comments? Last word of wisdom or advice or closing thoughts that you'd like to share that you didn't get to?
I have a small announcement, not totally related to the program, but more so a follow-up for the webinar, if that's okay.
Uh-huh.
So I will be sending out an email that has mine, Amy's, and the recording of this event. I will also include in that email an enrollment deposit waiver code. So for any of our prospective applicants, there will be a code within that email that you can utilize to waive our enrollment deposit
Oh,
if you
great.
are admitted to the program. So it's a great tool to utilize to make our application and enrollment process just really financially accessible. So please look out for that email and let me or Amy know if you have any questions. So I just wanted to give a heads up to expect that email to come out.
Thanks, Taylor. That's great. All right. Any last closing thoughts from our speakers?
I think for me, it's the care the faculty has provided me throughout this program that has helped me to get to this point. Mother, you know, of 3, and just life happens. Life happens at any age. And just the care and support that I've received throughout this program is enough to say it's worth it, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. You're worth it. You're all worth it.
I'll say, trust the process and the journey. I know it seems a little bit confusing right now and terrifying for so many of us. But I think if you just listen, if you just trust your gut and trust your instincts, your heart, I think you'll find your way regardless of what everyone else says. I think this work is, if you find that if you see yourself in this space, there's something here for you. Trust that gut feeling, lean into the possibilities and go for it. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thanks, Cory. That's great. Okay, so thank you. Thank you, Stacie, Max, and Cory. Really appreciate you joining me tonight to share your insights and your thoughts. And thank you, Queen and Melanie, for joining us. And anybody else out there? I saw a couple other people logging in and out. It looked like they were having some technical issues. So, but thank you, everybody. And again, thank you to Taylor for logistical stuff. Yeah. Thanks. All right. More capstone writing. Go for it. Thank you. Good to
Thank
see you
you.
guys.